Welcome back to the volunteer training program, the Need to Know series. Experts in the field of quality and safety strongly encourage volunteers to be trained in dysphagia and food safety. As a trained volunteer, you will be better prepared to provide volunteer services that are of high quality and provided in a safe manner. This module is part of several self-teaching and self-learning quality and safety modules that will assist you feel more comfortable in your role as a safety-conscious volunteer. The module will last approximately 10 minutes and is a self-contained and independent unit of instruction, so you can learn at your own pace and at a time that is convenient for you. So now, sit back, get comfortable, and let's learn together. Simply press the Enter button on your keypad to move forward. Difficulty swallowing and food safety. This particular module addresses a common challenge that many volunteers encounter on a regular basis. That is, helping people who have difficulty swallowing. At the end of this important safety training module, you will be able to explain the impact of aging on our swallowing reflex, list the possible consequences of swallowing difficulty, also known as dysphagia, describe the causes of dysphagia, identify the different food textures and liquid consistencies, explain the principle behind modifying food textures, and recognize your role as a volunteer with regards to food safety. And finally, recall the 3 key terms or the most important parts of the presentation. Aging has an impact on our swallowing reflex. It can sometimes cause a decrease in saliva, causing our mouth to be dry, making it more difficult for us to swallow what's in our mouth. Certain medications can also cause a decrease in saliva production. Food also takes longer to move down to the stomach. As we age, the movement called peristalsis, which is the movement that helps our food to move from our pharynx down through the esophagus to our stomach, it slows down. The strength of our chewing decreases. Chewing is hard work, and as we age, we do not have the strength we used to chew our food well, and therefore we sometimes try to swallow larger pieces, which can cause us to choke. The 3 muscles that help us to swallow are the tongue, cheeks, and pharynx. As we age, these muscles tire more easily and are not as strong. Let's take a look at the next slide to see what the swallowing reflex looks like. Every time we swallow, 4 separate steps take place. In the first step, food is chewed and broken up. It is formed into what we call a bolus. In the second step, the chewed food is pushed to the back of the mouth by the tongue. When the tongue makes this movement, it prepares the pharynx for the next step. The third step involves the closing off of the airway to prevent food from entering the lungs. And then the chewed food is pushed through the pharynx into the esophagus. The fourth and final step involves the food slowly moving down the esophagus through muscle contractions or peristalsis all the way to the stomach. Take a moment now to locate on the picture the salivary glands, the tongue, the pharynx, and the esophagus. Dysphagia is the medical word that means difficulty swallowing. It is a common problem especially among seniors living in long-term care homes as well as assisted living homes. A person who has difficulty swallowing can take double the amount of time to eat, and as a volunteer, this is very important for you to remember. Let's learn some of the possible dangers of dysphagia. Someone who has difficulty swallowing is more at risk for choking. With this increased risk for choking, the person becomes more fearful every time they eat or drink. This in turn can lead to the person not eating or drinking enough and to lose weight. Sometimes food, saliva, or liquids can accidentally be inhaled into the lungs or airways. This can also happen when the person chokes. This inhaled food or liquid in the lungs can cause a pneumonia. This is called an aspiration pneumonia, a potentially very serious problem. What can cause dysphagia? Well, there are a variety of causes. Sometimes it is simple aging, but in other cases it can be a disease process such as Parkinson's disease, for example. Certain tumors and medications can also cause someone to develop dysphagia. What can be done to help people with dysphagia to cope? Adapting or modifying the texture of foods or changing the consistency of liquids is one way of helping someone to cope with their swallowing disorder. You may be interested to know that foods are usually divided into 5 texture types: regular food, tender texture, soft foods, and these are very soft foods and are cut into less than 1 centimeter size pieces. Minced texture, these are soft foods that are cut in less than 0.5 centimeters in size. And lastly, puree. These are foods with a very smooth texture without any lumps, particles, or seeds. People with swallowing problems often choke on liquids, especially clear liquids such as tea and broth. Liquids are usually divided into 4 different consistencies, and they are clear liquids, nectar thickness, honey thickness, and pudding consistency. Adapting or modifying the texture of foods or changing the consistency of liquids is one way of helping someone to cope with their swallowing disorder. All this really means is that the food is being physically changed from one texture to another. For example, a piece of pork is considered regular texture and would not be suitable for someone with a swallowing problem. But by modifying the texture, such as mincing or pureeing the pork, the person will still be able to enjoy the flavor without the danger of choking. Why do we modify food textures and liquid consistencies? Well, remember, modifying and changing food textures and liquid consistencies are needed for people with swallowing problems to prevent them from choking on food and breathing in liquids, which can result in aspiration pneumonia. How can you tell if the person you are volunteering with has a swallowing problem? Well, you will not know unless you are advised by the client themselves or their family or by the staff. This is a very, very important point to remember. It can be dangerous to give a snack or a drink to someone who cannot swallow properly. As a volunteer, it is very important that you understand your role with regards to dysphagia and food safety. Be aware of the client or resident's ability to chew and swallow. If you are not sure, ask. Volunteers do not thicken liquids unless in special circumstances where they have been specifically trained to do so. In long-term care settings, residents who have swallowing difficulties are known by the staff, and the staff will advise you on what to do. It's time now to recall the 3 key elements or the most important segments of the difficulty swallowing and food safety module. Here are the 3 key terms of the presentation, the most important things for you to take away with you. First, people with swallowing problems need modified food textures and liquid consistencies, or they can choke or inhale liquids into their lungs. 2. Know your role as a volunteer with regards to food safety. Every volunteering environment is different. Make sure you ask what you are permitted to do. And 3. Know your client or resident. Do they have difficulty swallowing? If you don't know, make sure you find out before you give them anything to eat or drink. Congratulations, you have completed a very important learning module. Please let your volunteer coordinator know that you have completed this module so they can keep track of your trainings in your file. So, until the next time, thank you very much for being a safety-conscious volunteer.